Today we're looking at Colorverse Andromida. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Colorverse Andromida is a part of their Season 2 line of inks. Colorverse Andromida is a magenta ink. And before we get to the writing sample, let's take a look at those sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, I dunk it into water, I let it rise up for 10 to 15 seconds. We see here a darker magenta line on the bottom, and then it's a very light magenta as it works up, and we see some purple at the very top. Very interesting, as magentas and purples are close in the spectrum. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water for that same 10 to 15 seconds. This looks no different than the original one. It's exactly the same. No water resistance whatsoever. Now resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to hold up on the page and how hard it might be to clean out of the pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before I test it. Looking at the highlighter, you can see that this ink does not like highlighters at all. It's almost unreadable. When we look at the water, we can see why. It is very reactivated. With only 30 seconds of a drop being down there, a lot of this ink is being pulled up and removed from the page, just blotting it away. The same thing happens with the flush, which we really would hope for, that the flush can take any ink off that paper as much as possible and really get it moving. And it does here. And of course the bleach, that is going to completely remove it. I just don't know that I recommend it a lot for your pens, but it will definitely take this ink off the page. This is a bell curve, or a normal distribution. For the 365 inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, where viscosity is like the flow of the ink. Now, normal is the range from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse Andromida has a viscosity of 1.62. At 1.62, it is in the red range. It is getting very close to that blue line showing water. Now it's close to the orange, but this is a very watery, very wet, high-flowing ink. Did I use a lot of words there for that? Yes, I did. Good for dry pens. This bell curve shows the average dry time. For the 365 inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds. Normal is from 13 to 21 seconds. That means one standard deviation away from that average. Colorverse Andromida has an average dry time of 17 seconds. So despite its high flow, it dries very well. That makes it a very, very good candidate for your dry pens to help bring out some of the shading. To find my average dry time, I average the dry time of my writing samples with the extra fine and medium nib done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Let's take a look at the writing sample. I got this ink in sample form, and to keep writing samples, as always, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium nib and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine nib. Let's look at Clairefontaine. Starting out, we have no bleed, no feather. Starting out, we have no bleed and no ghosting. Feather. Not written on that side. Looking at the 1.1 stub. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, almost no color variation. Moving on to the extra fine. Again, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Very little color variation, not none, but very little, and 11 seconds to dry. Medium nib, still no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. No real color variation, and when we look down at the scrubbies, we see that there's almost no color variation that goes on there. And on the smear, I don't know that I would be able to recover this if I did smear it while writing. Tomoe River. On Tomoe River, we have a couple spots where I may have been aggressive, tend to be a little aggressive on the scrubbies. We have no bleed. These spots can't be bleed because that's where the lines are
for the smear test. So this can be some transfer from underneath, but this spot, I think I might have scratched the page. I'm not seeing real bleed. We have we have show through because it's Tomoe River. Looking at the 1.1. At the 1.1 we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, 0 color variation. And on the extra fine, still no feather, no spread, halo, sheen, none of that. And no color variation. 17 seconds to dry. With the medium, that smear, that's me, that is not feathering, that's my smearing it. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no color variation. 26 seconds to dry. This just stayed wet. Looking at the scrubby, we see 0 color variation, and there is no chance ever of recovering if you smear on this paper with this ink. Looking at the Rhodia. On Rhodia, we have no bleed, no show through. Couple spots look like they would want to come through, but they're not. On the 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no color variation. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no color variation. 12 seconds to dry. Not a lot happening with this. Medium, same thing, but it does get a little bit darker, so we do get to see some shading difference between an extra fine and a medium. The writing itself has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, none of that, no color variation, 17 seconds to dry. But it is darker than the extra fine, which is nice. When it comes to the scrubby, the extra fine shows us that there should be some color variation, it's just not happening. The smear, you might almost be able to recover this if you did smear it. Now I'm looking at Life paper. Life paper gives us no bleed, no show through, really. I mean, there's a tiny bit. It shows more on camera than it does in person. The 1.1, same things going on. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no color variation. Slightly different color, and that's got to do with the difference in paper. So we get a slightly different color with this ink, and that's a result of the paper. Moving on to the extra fine. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Where in the world am I? Sorry. 10 seconds to dry. Almost no shading. A couple spots where there's a tiny bit on the, and a tiny bit that happens on the Z of lazy. And that's all we're getting for color variation on the extra fine. On the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no color variation. It is darker than the extra fine, but no color variation whatsoever. The scrubbies show us that we're not getting color variation. And on the smear, maybe you can recover it. I can kind of see the lines underneath. So to me, that's a toss-up of what might happen. We're then looking at Levenger paper. On Levenger paper, we get no bleed, we get no ghosting, and on the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no color variation, really straightforward, extra fine, still no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, 7 seconds to dry, no color variation, comes in a little darker on the medium, with no other qualities, just a little darker shade. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. 11 seconds. Not bad. Not a bad paper, not a bad paper ink combination. On the scrubby, we see that we will not get color variation on this ink. And when it comes to the smear, you, again, might be able to actually recover this. That's a maybe. That's a toss-up, depending. I don't see it as much in the medium, but in the extra fine, I do see the lines not showing up a lot on camera. I don't know if I can zoom in enough. We can see the lines of the extra fine, not so much of the medium, some of the medium. There we go. So that's what I get with this.
Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Andromida, I would prefer to find an ink that will complement it on the page. With Colorverse Andromida being a dark magenta color, I was looking for a light violet. Which light violet did I find? Diamine Bilberry. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I'm asking if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen and use it for a day. I then put that ink into the Pilot Metropolitan with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. So what do I think about Colorverse Andromida? I think it's a very nice color. I think you only get color variation by choosing different nibs and flows. Now that's not a problem. Otherwise, it tends to give a very consistent color, which is nice. So now the big question, would I purchase a bottle of this ink? No. It's pricey. I would rather a magenta that is easier to get a hold of, and for that reason, I wouldn't go with a bottle. But if you've got a bottle, use it. It's great. I would love to have a bottle. I just don't want to put out that kind of money for a bottle of ink. Thanks for watching.